I used to think I knew what fear was. But that was before my ex-boyfriend, Derek, showed up in my life again. It had been over a year since we broke up, and I was finally starting to move on. I had a new job, a new apartment, and even a new boyfriend. Life was good. But then Derek started sending me emails. At first, they were just innocent messages asking how I was doing. But then they became more obsessive. He wanted to know where I was always, who I was with, what I was doing. I tried to ignore him, but he was relentless. He would show up at my work, at my apartment, at my boyfriend's house. He would call me in the middle of the night, leaving messages that made my skin crawl. He would send me gifts, flowers, chocolates, even jewelry, with notes that said things like, "I'll never stop loving you." I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I tried to get a restraining order, but Derek always managed to find a way around it. I changed my phone number, but he still managed to contact me. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, just in case. Then one day, I came home from work to find Derek sitting on my couch. I don't know how he got in, but there he was, smiling at me like we were old friends. I froze. I didn't know what to say. Derek stood up and walked towards me, his eyes fixed on mine. "I've missed you," he said. I took a step back, my heart racing. "Derek, you need to leave. Now." He stepped closer. "I can't do that, babe. I love you too much." I tried to run past him, but he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. I screamed, but he covered my mouth with his hand. Shh, he whispered. "It's okay. I just want to talk to you." I tried to struggle, but he was too strong. He pushed me down onto the couch and sat on top of me, pinning me down with his weight. I could feel his breath on my face, his hands on my body. "I've missed you so much," he said. "I've been watching you, you know. Watching you with that other guy. He's not good enough for you, babe. You belong with me." I screamed again, but he just laughed. He put his hand around my throat and squeezed, making it hard to breathe. "You're mine," he said. "You'll always be mine." I thought I was going to die. I thought this was the end. But then I remembered the knife under my pillow. I reached for it, feeling its sharp edge against my fingertips. With all my strength, I plunged the knife into Derek's side. He screamed and let go of me, falling to the floor in a heap. I scrambled to my feet and ran out of the apartment, not looking back. I called the police from a nearby store. They found Derek's body in my apartment, along with the knife I had used to kill him. I was arrested for murder. It's been 6 months since then. I'm still waiting for my trial. I know I'll probably go to jail for the rest of my life. But sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. If killing Derek was the only way to get him out of my life for good. I still have nightmares about that night. Sometimes I wake up screaming, convinced that Derek is still alive and coming after me. Other times, I can still feel his hands on my body, his breath on my face. But then I remind myself that he's gone. He can never hurt me again. And I hope that someday, I'll be able to move on from this nightmare and find some sense of peace. Until then, I'll keep waiting for my trial, hoping that justice will be served and that I'll be able to start over. But I'll never forget what Derek did to me, and I'll never forget what I had to do to survive. Sometimes, I wonder if there was anything else I could have done. If there was any way I could have escaped his grasp without resorting to violence. But then I remember the fear, the terror, the desperation. I remember the way he looked at me, like I was nothing more than a possession. And I know that I did what I had to do to protect myself. I hope that nobody else ever must go through what I went through. I hope that nobody ever must face a crazy ex like Derek. But if they do, I hope they know that there is always a way out. There is always help available, whether it's from friends, family, or the authorities. And if all else fails, sometimes, the only way out is through the darkness. I've always been a laid-back guy, never really got too emotional about anything. But that was before I met Sarah. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, with bright blue eyes and a smile that could light up a room. We hit it off immediately and started dating. At first, everything was great. We had a lot of fun together, and Sarah seemed to really care about me. But then things started to get weird. She would call me constantly, even when I was at work, and get upset if I didn't answer. She would show up at my house unannounced, and when I asked her how she knew where I lived, she just smiled and said she'd figured it out. I tried to break up with her several times, but each time she would cry and beg me not to leave her. She even threatened to hurt herself if I ever left her. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed with her. One night, I came home from work and found Sarah in my house, going through my things. When I asked her what she was doing, she just smiled and said she was looking for something. I tried to get her to leave, but she refused. She said she wanted to stay with me, and she wasn't going anywhere. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Sarah started showing up at my job, and even followed me when I went out with my friends. She would call me constantly, leaving me dozens of voicemails and sending me hundreds of texts. I couldn't escape her. Then one night, I woke up to find Sarah standing over me, staring at me while I slept. When I asked her what she was doing, she just smiled and said she was watching me sleep. I was so scared that I couldn't even move. I tried to get her to leave, but she refused. She said she loved me, and she wasn't going anywhere. That was when I knew I had to do something. I called the police and told them about Sarah's behavior. They said they couldn't do anything unless she threatened me, but they did agree to talk to her. When they did, she just smiled and said that she loved me and wanted to be with me forever. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped, and I couldn't escape her. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, just in case she ever tried to hurt me. Then one night, I woke up to find Sarah standing at the foot of my bed, holding a knife. She had a crazed look in her eyes, and she was muttering to herself. I was so scared that I couldn't even move. She started walking towards me, the knife glinting in the moonlight. That was when I knew I had to do something. I grabbed the knife from under my pillow and held it up, trying to scare her off. But she just smiled and kept coming towards me. I didn't know what else to do, so I lunged at her with the knife. I don't remember much after that. I just remember seeing her fall to the ground, blood pooling around her. I was in shock. I didn't know what I had done. I called the police and told them what happened. They came and took me away in handcuffs. Now I'm in jail, waiting for my trial. I don't know what's going to happen to me. All I know is that I'm never going to be the same again. I'll always remember Sarah, and what she did to me. She was my crazy ex, and she almost killed me. I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was 3 a.m. and I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. But then it rang again, and again, and again. I finally answered, and it was him. My crazy ex-boyfriend, who I hadn't talked to in over a year. My heart started pounding as soon as I heard his voice. He said he needed to talk to me, that he had something important to tell me. I told him it could wait until morning, but he insisted. So, I agreed to meet him at a nearby park. It was dark and quiet, and I felt like I was walking into a trap. As soon as I saw him, I regretted coming. He looked different somehow, his eyes wild and his hair unkempt. He was clutching something in his hand, and as I got closer, I saw that it was a knife. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with those crazy eyes. Then he lunged at me with the knife. I screamed and tried to run, but he caught me and held me tight. He whispered in my ear that he loved me, that he couldn't live without me, that he had to have me. I struggled and fought, but he was too strong. He dragged me to his car and threw me in the backseat. I could see the fear in his eyes, and I knew I was in real trouble. He drove us to his cabin in the woods, a place I had never been before. The whole time he was muttering to himself, saying things that didn't make sense. He kept talking about how we were meant to be together, that fate had brought us back to each other. Once we got to the cabin, he tied me up and locked me in a room. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I tried to reason with him, to get him to let me go, but it was like he wasn't even listening. Days turned into weeks, and I lost track of time. He would come into the room and talk to me, sometimes for hours on end. He would tell me all his crazy theories about the universe, about how we were the only two people who really understood each other. I tried to escape a few times, but he always caught me. He seemed to have a sixth sense when it came to knowing what I was going to do next. One day, he came into the room with a ring and got down on one knee. He told me he wanted to marry me, that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I was horrified, and I knew I had to get out of there. I waited until he was asleep and managed to slip out of the ropes. I tiptoed out of the room and tried to find a way out of the cabin. But he woke up and caught me before I could get very far. He was furious, and I could see that he had completely lost touch with reality. He started saying things about how we were going to be together forever, even if it meant killing me and himself. I knew I had to act fast. I managed to grab the knife from him and run outside. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from him. He chased after me, but I was faster. I ran through the woods, tripping and stumbling along the way. But I kept going, knowing that my life was on the line. Finally, I saw a clearing up ahead. I ran towards it, not knowing what I would find. But as I emerged from the woods, I saw a police car waiting for me. I collapsed in relief and told them everything that had happened. The police searched the cabin and found my ex-boyfriend dead. He had taken his own life with the same knife I had used to defend myself. I was in shock, but also grateful to be alive. It took me a long time to recover from that experience, but eventually, I was able to move on. But the memory of my crazy ex-boyfriend and the horror he put me through will stay with me forever. It's a reminder that sometimes, love can turn into obsession, and that we should always trust our instincts and be wary of red flags.